Brittany, it's
Hello.
so good to see you. It's been a long time.
Has it, or did you watch the Reindeer Games?
I did watch you,
Okay.
and it was so exciting because it was different watching you this time around. Because for context, this is your fourth time on television competing on a show. You've made a
Yeah.
ton of appearances. Can I? Why do you do that? Like, why you're like, all right, I'm coming back for the fourth time. Why do you think you go on reality TV?
Unlike a one Dan Gheesling who has something to hold on to or something to prove or some sort of a legacy to maintain, I got nothing. It's really easy to say yes. There is nowhere to go but up. There is nowhere to go but up. So, not having to think about, am I tarnishing a reputation? Am I destroying a legacy? That's one less thing that goes through my mind that I have to think about, unlike you. So for me, when they call and say 10 days, I'm like, I'm packed. I'm packed. When's the car coming? What time does the car arrive? Because to me, that sounds like a good time. Sometimes I sit around and salivate and fantasize about those sequester days that we hated so much. Like, we hated being in sequester. It was the worst. Poor me. Wah, wah. Sometimes I think about those blissful days where I just formed into the bed and just
No
adhered,
responsibilities.
no responsibilities, fusing to my sheets, okay? Rolling whatever DVD that they have provided me. And so anyway, when they first called and I was like, "Well, is there a sequester?" And I really wanted them to say yes, and they were like, "Yes, however, it's only 2 days." I was like, I will be there. I will be there. I don't know if you're paying. Are you charging me? Like, do I need to cover? Do I need to send my credit card to the hotel? What's the situation? It was an easy yes for me.
And
Very easy.
and this is why you're one of my favorite people, that I've met in that world, that weird world that we step into and out of, the reality TV world, is because you're always so entertaining and dynamic. And you get, like you said, yeah, I wanted to go back to do this for 10 days, but have you ever thought about why you wanted to go on reality TV in the first place? Have you ever thought about that? And have you, like, why is that?
Well, I really only wanted to go on Big Brother. I was a Big Brother fan who
Mhm.
had watched from season 1, and I just like loved it. And distinctly remember being in, like, it was either junior high or early high school whenever I first was watching it, and being like, this would be so fun. This would be so amazing. Like, I want to do this someday. Never really believing that it would actually last that long and I would be able to. And so, I mean, it was very Big Brother specific. Actually, my mom, I don't know if I've ever told this story before, but whenever I had already gone to an open casting for Big Brother, and I was dating that guy who I was dating on season 12, who we don't talk about that.
Mhm.
That's not a situation that we really talk about. Okay, so my mom really didn't like that guy, and so she sent in an application for me to go on The Bachelor behind my back
Okay.
while I was like in a committed relationship with this dude who she hated.
Okay.
And so I remember I was at, like, I don't know, some gross restaurant with him, and my phone rang and it was a Los Angeles area code. And I was like, oh my God, it's Big Brother. Like, they're calling me back. Like, I'm going to get on the show. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Which I had lied to him that he didn't want me to audition for the show. And so
Strike
I had,
two.
right,
Non-supportive. Okay, but keep going.
non supportive. So I didn't tell him that I had auditioned until, like, I was going on. So as my phone was ringing and it was Los Angeles, I was just like, I can't answer it in front of him, but oh my God, like, it's Big Brother calling. They leave me a message and I go open my voicemail and it was the people from The Bachelor. They were like, hey, Brittany, this is The Bachelor on ABC. Like, your mom sent you. And I'm like, my mom sent in, I never even returned the call, but I called her and I was like, Mom, I have a boyfriend. And she was like, Not for long. Like, I hate that guy. You should go on The Bachelor." I was like, I'm not going on The Bachelor. I'm trying to go on Big Brother. So anyway, it was not reality TV. It was specifically Big Brother that I was interested in doing.
So when your mom like tried to divert your plans to go on Big Brother to do The Bachelor, what like for you was that like you didn't take that as hey you should break up with this guy or you're just at this I mean we don't need to get in your old relationship but you're just like all in and you're like hey my mom's going so far to create an audition tape for me for another show Let me listen to her a
That
little bit.
is so typical of something that my mom would do that I don't think I wasn't even phased. I was just like, okay, here's another one of her. She is like one of those very controlling type parents. Like crazy. Like whenever I was in college, if I skipped a class, she would call me, and if I answered the phone, she knew I was supposed to be in class. No one else's parents like kept up with their college schedule like my mom did.
Well, that's so interesting to hear because you seem like the type of person that is the opposite of being able to be controlled. Like someone's not going to tell you, "Hey, you can't do this." Like from what
I
I
just inherited it from my mother, I guess. I think that's what we're getting down to. And she actually auditioned for Survivor. I know I've told that story. But she auditioned for Survivor season 1. I was very young. I was like, I don't know, 9 or something. And she made it to finals in LA, but she didn't get cast.
wow. So this
Yeah,
whole
and
the whole go ahead.
this was like OG Survivor where they were like bringing in monkeys to see how you would interact with the wildlife during their audition process. Like it was crazy. Anyway, so she didn't make it, and they told her it was because she couldn't swim. But then the next season, what was his name, Jervis, or
Yeah.
yeah, who couldn't swim, and she was like, "I know you. I know they were lying now."
Like
But
she never pressed on and like applied again for Survivor.
mm-mm.
Really?
No, she stood it that one time. But so she was always like super, like we were reality TV. We were in it together. Like we watched all these shows together, and we watched every reality show. I mean, age inappropriate reality television. I have been there from the beginning of the Bravo network, like as a fan, tuning in as like a ninth grader watching the first ever Housewives. I mean, I watched all of those VH1 dating shows, Rock of Love, Flavor of Love. This is just like my whole life was I loved to watch reality TV, but Big Brother was the only show I wanted to do.
So I've never met your mom. What is your mom very similar to you? How would you describe her personality to someone that's never met her?
Yeah, she's similar to me, but like, I mean, also not. Like, I would say she's not quite like, I don't know.
If we put a camera in front of her, would she do as well as you do? Would she like Britney the camera and just like completely just
In a
shine and
much
do what you
more
do?
awkward, like cringy way.
Got it. So you said she was on you had like her thumb on you in college. Was there a point in life when you like were like, all right, mom, I'm good, I got this? Was it like when you went in Big Brother, or is it still like that to this day?
I would say that she's still definitely, I mean, she's a big part of my life. I talk to her like every single day, and she still definitely will try to control me sometimes, but I push back. I think I started pushing back. I studied abroad in college, and I remember telling her that I was going to do that, and she was like, "Okay, no, you're not, but all right." And then I really did, like, I made it happen completely on my own. That's the first time I can remember being like, "No, this is really what I'm doing, and I don't really care how you feel about it." And
Where
I
did
think I've been just rebelling ever since.
where did you study abroad at?
Spain.
What made you pick Spain in terms of because it's like you get one of those books and it's like go wherever you want, study
Go wherever
abroad.
you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a Spanish major, but so I kind of wanted to do, I mean, I wanted to go somewhere obviously Spanish speaking because I was going to be in school while I was there. But I wanted to also travel, be able to really travel on the weekends and before and after. So Europe just seemed, I don't know, fancy and cool, and we would like go to fancy places. So that's what I did.
And then when you're like, okay, I'm doing this, and it's literally here's your plane ticket. How did you convey that to your mom? Be like, look, this is actually happening, and did she accept it, or was she just like, whatever?
She accepted it at that point, but she will even say that was the first time that she was like, "Okay, okay, I guess you're like really gonna call the shots now, huh?" Because I mean, I was like college age, so that is kind of the coming of age time when you start to like do your own thing. But
And
she
it,
always will still try to have a hand in everything. Like she goes on most of my vacations with me still to this day, and
okay.
she like to help with the kids and stuff, and she'll like plan a ton of it. And a lot of times I don't want to plan it anyways because I'm tired. And so I'll just like let her. Like she'll just run with the plans, and I'm like, "All right, great. Here's what we're doing today."
So when you say you plan vacations, you and I have talked a lot. Like you are, and I don't know if people know this about you. You are like a Disney aficionado. Like I don't want to put your stuff on blast, but you go fairly often, right?
Not only am I Not only do I go often, I'm like very critical of anyone else who goes to Disney World, and I am judging how they planned the trip, what they accomplished while they were there, and how much they enjoyed it. And by the way, how much they enjoyed it is a direct correlation to how well they planned it. And if they didn't plan it correctly and then they don't enjoy it, I'm not surprised because you didn't do it right.
So I bring this up because I think we're on different sides of the coin on this, but I want to learn. So adults that go to Disney, like you go, I don't want you go every year, pretty much every year, and you have three little
Pretty
kids.
much, yeah.
Okay, so you go and you see adults that go to Disney. Like,
There are many adults who go to Disney, sans children.
are you a part of that club? And if so, can you explain to me what it's like? Like, what is it about?
I am not a part of that club. I did not start loving Disney until I took my kids until he was like 2, the first time that we went. That's when I like really fell in love with it conceptually. I had been to Disney like as a kid and then once as an adult before I had kids, and I liked it, but I wasn't like a part of the culture of it. You know what I mean?
Or
Like
like
I mean
Disney
it was
pilled?
great. Yeah, but I would just would have been just as likely to go somewhere else. Like I wasn't like die hard Disney psycho like I am now. That's only been since I've had kids.
And so, can you explain? Because I know, can you explain your level of like psychoness of how often you go?
Very regimented, very like we're talking rope drop to fireworks, no breaks. No breaks. I know every single restaurant. I know everything on I have made friends for no other reason than a Disney community, like a Disney relationship. People who are in my life, and I'm very like particular about it. Like it actually sometimes if someone is going and they're not going to do it the way that I like it done, I would rather not even know about it.
Oh,
Don't send me your pictures from like the back of a terrible ride that you shouldn't even be wasting your time at. Like I don't even want to know. I don't want to know because it bothers me.
so for someone right now who hasn't planned a Disney trip, that doesn't want the non-Britney experience, like what are some of the things that you can do that maybe we can't go full Britney in Disney, but like what's a good start? You're like, Dan, this is the first thing you should do.
Oh, that's really hard to say because I understand that it's so overwhelming. It's so big that if you haven't been before, you're kind of like lost, and I totally get that. I would say if possible, a scouting mission. Like if you're like remotely located or you're going to be in the area with your kids or without your kids, maybe you go for just a day
Okay.
while you're there doing something else or whatever, just so that you have an idea of how the thing even works because it's so massive, and I understand how that can be overwhelming. Like I got to have the Genie Plus, but then what's the lightning lane, and then what about the magic band? Do I need the magic band? It's like a different language. And so I understand that if you haven't ever been before, it's like too much to try to take on. But if you can't do a scouting or any reconnaissance, I would say get a Disney planner, which I'm not a Disney planner and I don't need a Disney planner and I can't refer you to a Disney planner, but these people do exist and they're paid by Disney World, I believe. So they're making like somewhat of a commission off of whatever they book you for, is my understanding. I haven't personally used one because I don't need them because I know more than them. But they will be able to help you as far as like booking all your dining and like mapping it out. And that's probably really helpful if you've never done it before because it is kind of a massive undertaking.
I was literally going to say, it sounds like a massive undertaking. What is so special about it for you and your family that you're like, okay, it's worth it to like budget for this, plan for this, and then on top of it, deal with little kids in an environment that is like crazy. Theme parks are
I
crazy.
think it's just like the forced happiness that I just like really love. Like we are going to be here for 6 days and you will enjoy it and you will be happy and you're going to smile and you're going to love it. And it's just like okay, I think it's the ability you're in control of like the plans, right? So if you're someone who enjoys planning and enjoys being in control, that's very fun to like create the perfect schedule that makes everyone happy. And then when you're there, it's just kind of like I don't even know what the best way to describe it is. I like it better than other types of vacations that are a little bit more a little bit more flexible, or maybe we don't know where we're going to eat dinner or whatever. I like to like have a plan and be regimented and follow it. And it's a very good environment for that. And then, the experiences are cool. Like I can't every day roll up and ride like a roller coaster in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So yes, like the rides are great. The associations to the different characters are wonderful. If your kids are into those movies or whatever, it's all just fun. It's so clean. The Everything is clean. Like you go anywhere else and it's just never going to be as clean as it is at Disney.
So
It's just like it doesn't feel grimy.
so if you're going to Disney for 7 days and there's very little chance that day 4 you're gonna pull the plug and be like, we're just gonna stay at the hotel today, relax at the pool. That will not happen. That's not something that happens for you.
That would literally never happen. Like I will be annoyed if my husband asks to go change underwear. I'm like, absolutely not. We are to be in line at It's a Small World right now. I don't need to know what your needs are. We're going.
Okay.
That's never happened. Some people do it flexible and they're like, oh, I take half a pool day. When someone says to me, take half a pool day, I'm totaling up the cost of what you paid for that half day tickets. And I am squeezing every smile out of that dollar that I can possibly get. And a pool is not on the agenda. I can pool anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
I'm not pool.
So you go on this Disney trip, right? That's like at one kind of trip. What do you do to relax? Because it sounds like this is like, I won't call it a job, but it's like you're very on top of it. So what does
You are
Brittany do
not
to
relaxed.
so
If you lay down in your bed at Disney World and your feet are not still hurting after being elevated, if your back is not aching, if there are not band-aids and moleskin somewhere, then you have done something very wrong. You should be the opposite of relaxed.
and how does Ryan deal with this? Your husband.
He just listens. He's the muscle. He just pushes the stroller where I say, and he puts that little smile on because he's not tempting fate. He wants to live the rest of his life, so he is just along for the ride.
I understand.
I guarantee you, if he had not married me, that he would have never even stepped a toe in Disney World. Maybe once, like maybe one time in
Is
this fantasy life where he's married to someone, chill. He like maybe goes one time, and he's one of those people that's like, oh, it was too much, it was too overwhelming, it was hot, I'm never going back. But he married me, so he gets to go every year.
has there ever been a moment you're at Disney and you're like out of the corner of your eye you see like a true moment of enjoyment from Ryan, or is it just like he's just
Oh yeah, he cries all the time. He cries really easy. So anything that's like a magic moment, like when the fireworks, or like if the kids, like when they were really little, 3 or 4, if they like go up and they're like Mickey, oh, he's such a sucker. He really is. He cries all the time.
okay? So when you're done with this, I'll loosely call it a vacation. Like you come
Yes.
back, you have to be spent. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
you need a vacation from the vacation. What do you do to relax besides go to Disney World? Because that doesn't sound very relaxing the way you do it from this side of the camera.
Do you mean like in a vacation sense, or do you mean just like at home?
Both. Like, what do you do to unwind? Because it's like I was expecting you to say you're taking a day at Disney to chill, but there was none of that.
There's To unwind, I send my kids to school and watch reality TV
Okay.
for a long time. I'm on a sister wives journey right now, so that's what I was doing that literally 30 minutes ago.
Do you watch
Curled
90
up.
Day or no? Do you watch 90 Day
Oh
Fiance?
my god. 90 Day is like, if anyone asks me like what is the best show? There is nothing else like 90 Day. There's nothing else like it. Because all of our other shows that we're used to, all of our shows that were great and living their best lives, like at the dawn of reality television, they've gone the way of softening, but not 90 Day. 90 Day is still as real and as gritty as like reality TV can get. It's because the characters are new, like they keep bringing in these new people, they have completely naive perspectives on like what this is going to do to them, or how it's going to impact their life, or how this is going to look. Whereas all the other shows that we watch, like people have caught on. 90 Day is like the only place left where you get like gritty, just raw, like old school style reality television. I'm obsessed with 90 Day.
Versus like what we see now, someone goes into Big Brother is very well insulated. They know everything.
Yeah,
They know how to play everything out. I get what you're saying.
exactly. And they're guarded, they're super aware of like, how is this going to look? What is this going to look like? How should I play this? Not on 90 Day. On 90 Day, they're just like their mom lives in their walk-in closet with two chihuahuas, two guinea pigs. I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing, riveting television. It's my favorite show of all, I think.
I mean, sometimes I wonder if it's real because of so many crazy things that happen. But I want to flip this back to you because you're just coming like fresh out of an experience. I look at you
Yep.
like you've been in like the early days of reality TV and kind of like mid days, and then now like
Yeah.
this post, you would call it post 90 day, where people know everything to expect. When you were going
Yes.
through that, were you aware of what you're doing, and did you change any of your behaviors, or what was your entering into reality TV in this new era where everything's scrutinized? How did you
Yeah.
approach that?
Very differently. So in season 12, I would say that was my sorry, my ring light fell. I'm not very professional over here. My ring light broke a long time ago and
Looks
I
great.
never bought it. Okay, thanks. Um when I went on season 12, this was really before and it was completely before Instagram, and Twitter was like a baby. I didn't even have a Twitter when I went on season 12. My mom signed me up for one while I was gone. And so I came off of the show with a Twitter, but I didn't go on the show with Twitter. So it was like really kind of the beginning of all of that, like online type stuff, but still like a very, very, very not PC world at all. Obviously, if you've ever seen season 12. So I went on season 12 as like naive as a person can be, just like completely saying whatever, shooting straight from the hip the entire time. No regard, no passing thought to like, how is this going to look? What is this going to be like? Not even at all. Not even,
But
not even a passing thought.
But I think that's why one of the reasons why so many people like you is because it was like there wasn't this filter. And for me, like when I met you, I'm like, this is who you are. Like you are such a dynamic person that's always hilarious. And so like we saw it in 12 and saw it again in 14, but I mean, it was you were still really funny in the last season, of course, but
For me, it was a big difference even between 12 and 14. So by the time, okay, so I get out of 12 and have to deal with, whatever, like Twitter and all that kind of
no,
stuff.
what do you
And,
mean by whatever? Like, do you remember some like stuff that you read or saw or
oh,
did?
yes, terrible stuff. Terrible. Like, yeah, like there was like definitely backlash from like Rachel fans and people who didn't like. I don't care who you are on Big Brother, you have both. I think that you get even if it's not a lot of hate, there's someone who hates you, like guaranteed, 100%.
Do you remember
And
anything that was like particularly like you're like, I think back to 12, I got out. This was like tough.
yeah, I mean, I remember people tweeting me that I should have burned to death in the house that burned down while I was on the show, like stuff like that. I
It,
mean, like literal like death threats.
and that's so like you told me a little bit about that, but I know you've been through a lot of different kinds of adversity. But so can you talk about what happened with the fire? So you're while you're gone, what happened in
Yes,
your
the
house?
fire thing was like it got a little bit blown out of proportion because the truth is, yes, I what had happened was my apartment lease ended while I was on Big Brother 12. I went on to Big Brother 12 again. We'll reference that person that we no longer speak of. I went so before I left, we had made an agreement that we were going to be leasing this house. So while I was gone, he moved my things from my apartment because the lease was ending and into this house. And the intention was when Big Brother ended, I was going to move into the house with him. So he was living there with my dog and like all of my things. Everything that I owned and my dog were in this home, but it was a leased property. We didn't own it. I didn't own it. I had actually never like spent a night there, but I had, gone and looked at it and approved it or whatever. So he lived there the entire time I was gone for season 12. And it was the night before the finale that it burned. Like the house burned completely
Like
down.
cinders, ashes to the ground.
Yes,
What
to the
happened?
ground.
How did it burn?
As far as I know, it was supposedly an electrical fire. It was a really old, it was a much older home. It was in kind of a historic area. So I think at the time they worked off of the assumption that it was like electrical. But because we weren't the property owners,
Mm.
who knows? Like, I'm sure that's something the property owner dealt with as far as insurance claims and whatnot. All I knew was that, like, I lost almost everything I had because it burned, and my dog was safe. And those were like, and no one was hurt, which was good. Um,
Did
but
you
they came to me before finale and they were like, "Hey, just we have some news." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like sitting there for finale. I'm like jazzed up. Like I'm in a really good mood. And they're like, "Your house burned down." And I'm like, well, so I thought that they meant like my childhood home, like where my parents live. And so I'm like, my parents' house? And they were like, "No, no, no, the house in Little Rock." And I was like, "Oh, okay. That's a little better. That's a little bit easier." But is everyone okay? Is my dog okay? Whatever.
Wait, so what
And it
happened?
was
Did you have renter's insurance or what happened to all your stuff? Like, so you get out of the house and everything you own's torched.
It's torched. It's just it was gone. It was totally gone.
Did and that was it? You start over, brand new?
Start over brand new. Had nowhere to live. Like I got off the show and had to move back in with my parents kind of temporarily, but I almost immediately moved to New York. And like to be honest with you, I couldn't take anything to New York anyway, except for my dog because the apartment was so tiny. So it was like a cleansing that I never asked for. I own nothing. I'm leaving. I'm going to New York.
Why did you move to New York?
I got a really good job working for a pharmaceutical company. And at the time, kind of going back to the change of social media, and you can attest to this because you were on season 10. At the time that I did season 12, if anyone gave you, if you spoke to any alum, they gave you one piece of advice. That piece of advice was go get a real job. This is temporary. You cannot make a living off of this. Do not try to be famous. This was pre-Instagram. This was pre-influencer. This is everyone's resounding advice to me was do not try to make anything off of this. You take your money and you go get a real job. That was the advice that I was given. And I was very much like, okay, like that makes sense. That all of this is fleeting. No one from the prior seasons had really ever been able to like turn it into anything else. And so when I heard that piece of advice, like as soon as I got off of the show, I was like, okay, I got to find a job. I need to find a job like right away. And obviously that relationship that I was in had ended. I had nowhere to live. So it was very much like a clean slate of my life. Okay, what do you want to do with your life? And I had always wanted to move to New York. I'd always wanted to live in New York. So I really just found a job and took the opportunity to go.
And then how long were you in New York for?
I lived there for about 2 years before, no, maybe it was a year and a half before I moved back to Oklahoma.
So your experience in New York City, was it what you wanted? Or you like, this isn't for me? Like, so you said were you in pharmaceutical sales? That's what you said
I
you
was in
did?
pharma sales, which I loved. I loved that job. Oh my God, it was so good. I really didn't have to do anything. I don't know if I should be saying that publicly, but oh, it was the best. It was just like one Sephora to the next, get a quick signature along the way. I was living and working on the Upper East Side, which is gorgeous and like tons of like old New York money wealth. These physicians were great. Like I had a great experience. I kind of like how I romanticize sequester now. I romanticize this time in my life in New York where I lived in this tiny studio apartment, just me and my dog. I had to put a leash on her just for her to poop and pee. Like these are things that if I had to do again, I'm sure I'd be complaining all over again. But I romanticize it now and I'm just like, oh, to be alone in my studio apartment, like how amazing that would be. I mean, it was such a crappy apartment. It had mice. It was not good. Anyway,
So what drove you out of
I
New York
did
City? Were you just ready to come home or you had your fill or
I was dating Ryan and we were going to get married and actually didn't plan on living in Tulsa because he still lived in Arkansas at the time. He lived in Northwest Arkansas. but he ended up changing jobs and moving to Tulsa, and so then I moved to Tulsa. Be
Mm.
together for true love, Dan.
Well, because you guys knew each other like in school, right?
That's right. Like we had dated prior to me ever being on Big Brother 12. We had dated before that. And so yeah, we had dated for a long time. And so yeah, we whenever we started to get back together and talk about getting married, that's when I moved to Tulsa.
So this is pre-sliding into the DM. So how do you go from like living in Arkansas to New York City away from everyone? Like,
Yes.
how did he like slide in and
So
rekindle that? Do you
after
remember
Big
that?
Brother 12, a lot of people slid in. A lot of people. People were coming out of the woodwork. Like I was
You're
cool
just on
again.
TV, yeah.
I was on TV. Like I was so cool for like a second. I remember getting flowers from this one guy, and I had to make a really awkward phone call and be like, "Thanks, but no. Like, I'm not. We're not going to continue to talk." It was different with Ryan because we had always kept in touch, like always. Like even when we weren't together, we had always stayed friends and kept in touch. So it wasn't like he literally appeared out of nowhere. In
Mhm.
fact, I think I contacted him first, which I'm embarrassed to admit that, but I did.
No, hey, you know what you wanted.
I I did. He was and he was very much did not care, which continues to this day, about my reality television stint. Could have cared less. Didn't watch it. Didn't watch it. Like was just he was like, "Yeah, I heard on the radio that you were." And then of course, everyone was talking about it or whatever and I was like, "Did you watch it?" No. Oh, okay. He did not care. Did not care.
So you mentioned like you were cool again, and I just want like a quick, just because I don't know, I'm trying to get a quick snapshot of. So you guys were dating in high school, but what were you like in high school? Were you like tell me how correct or incorrect I am. Were you a thespian?
Um, I was a thespian until I started pageants because then that really took all my time.
So in high school, what was like a snapshot of what you were like in high school? What were you
Pageant time. High school was full blown pageant time.
like? You're on stage, like waving, like when you say in the Midwest, you say pageant time. That means nothing to me.
Yes, I was competing for various titles to get to go to state and compete for the title of Miss Teen Arkansas,
Okay.
and that was my entire like high school experience. Prior to that, when I was a little younger, like junior high and younger, I did do a lot of theater and stuff in theater. But then once I started doing pageants, that's all I did.
Is that why you play piano? Is because of pageants?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I started piano when I was 5, but that is what I did for my talent in pageants.
So, what is involved for you as a teenager with competing in pageants? You had to I don't even know what that is. It like the show Little Tiaras? Is that what it's like?
I mean, except for we're not children. Yeah, pretty much. Like you had to have like back then it was a little different because you still did swimsuit. They do fitness wear now. Now
Okay.
it's like fitness girl.
S-
But back then it was hardcore swimsuit. Like you were in the bikini and the heels and you were like walking around on stage.
I'm
Yeah, you had swimsuit, evening wear, talent, and interview, which we wore full blown suits in interview. I should get my suit out actually, like because I have it in the attic. I had this pink shiny satin suit. I'm talking like old school suit.
like Elle
Like
Woods from Legally Blonde type suit?
yes,
Okay.
yes, like a serious suit. I think that modern pageant girls don't do the suit. They do like a sensible dress with a sensible heel. No, this was old school. This was like, you can consider this like 80s because nothing had changed from the 80s till when I did it. Old school suits, old school swimsuits. Like it was like very much just like watching Miss America. We were just doing like our version of that at the teen level.
Did you enjoy that? What was the experience like for you? Was it something like you just had to do, or like did you enjoy doing it?
I loved doing it. And I will still I mean, I know that pageants they take a lot of heat and I get it. I understand all of the criticism around them. But for me personally, I never had a bad experience. I never had anything weird or creepy. And I think it gave me so much like stage presence. The interview portion in particular, like gave me, I just feel like I developed a lot of skills from it. From like those particular situations, that intensity, the answering questions, all of that I feel and you also had to be knowledgeable about the world. So when all the other teenagers in school literally had never watched the news. You had to know a little bit about what was going on because they would ask you about that in interviews. So it opened up your worldview a little bit, and philanthropy was part of it. So you had to pick an issue that was your philanthropy. Mine was always like literacy and reading, but everyone has like their own philanthropy that they choose. So there's like a volunteer, there's a philanthropic side to it as well. For me, it was all positive. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Some people have horror stories. I personally didn't. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I never did it after college though. Like I basically quit doing it in college. But for my high school life, that was like my major focus.
The value you got from that, is that something that you're going to introduce to your girls, or is that not a part of your family? Or
I mean, if they wanted to, I guess. My kids have not done toddlers and tiaras yet, like if that's what you're asking. Like they don't have flippers and they don't have fully airbrushed like doll-esque headshots. They have not done any pageants. I guess if they like wanted to, I'm pretty open with my parenting style about like anything they want to do or try, I will let them do. But they haven't asked to. So I don't know. I don't know if I can say it will or won't happen.
that's interesting because you rarely hear like a positive. I think that the general impression of pageants are like
Yes.
not what you just said. Like it helped
Yes.
develop you as an individual. So do they know about your pageants? Your kids, do they know about your?
They do because number one, I have an oil portrait at my parents' house that I won from one of my pageants where I have the crown on. It's my princess picture, and it hangs in the entryway of my parents' house.
It's like
So
it's you with the crown, like oil painted, frame the
correct.
whole. How does
Correct.
one? How would one get a image of that?
It's a one of one. Oh, I can text you a pic.
Please
But
do.
there's only one of them on Earth. And I can't wait for it to someday dawn. Like I needed to make it to like my great 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 grandchildren. And they have this on their wall. And it's just like, what is that? Like, I think it'll get creepier and weirder with age, but I love that. I want it has to stay in the family. I don't want it to ever end up in a consignment shop. I need it to stay in the family and on someone's wall forever.
So that's their exposure to you being in pageants, is like they just asked you one day, "Why is mom on the wall?"
Yeah, and my mom still has like at her house are my tiaras and stuff, and they'll play with them sometimes when we go over there.
Oh.
Just like, nothing crazy, but they know about it like loosely. They never really, I don't think, like asked me any questions about like what is a pageant? How does that work? But they know that I did them.
So okay, so you a brief snapshot of you in high school. So you did these pageants. Were you like the nerd girl that did pageants, or did you? Was it just something people didn't know about, or the
Dan, do
cool?
you think I was the nerd girl?
I think honestly, I think you were the thespian that everyone like liked, but also knew was extremely smart, and you kind of didn't mess with.
Okay, no, you're wrong.
Okay.
Everyone hated me. I had literally no friends. Like, I was so hated. But, well, I did deserve it. However, here's the deal. I grew up in a very, very, very small town. And in this small town, which this sounds crazy, only people will understand this who also came from small towns. Number one, who your family is and how long they've lived in that town like matters a lot.
Really?
Which sounds really dumb if you are like from a big city or whatever. But if you're from a small town, you'll understand. And like Ryan, my husband, for example, he had that family where it was like everyone knew his grandparents, everyone knew his parents. He has cousins at the school. He has his siblings are at the school. He had like all this family around him in the town. And then also, they care very much about whether or not you're an athlete. You can do anything else well and it doesn't matter. You have to be an athlete. Shocker, I was not an athlete. And as a double whammy, I had literally no family in this town. This was just like a random place that my parents moved to, like random choice. I had no cousins, I had nobody. I was completely alone in this town. So, I had like all of the right things going for me to make me like an outcast loser, and I was mean. And so just like all three of those things put together it was just not, I was not super well
What
liked.
do you mean you were mean?
I was like, rude and condescending and sarcastic and all the things that you would expect. Everything that you would expect from me in my most toxic teenage form is exactly what I was. Like a living, breathing monster.
But see, I expect that, but you're very self-aware. So to me, I think when everyone sees it, they see it as like entertaining and dynamic. But so you were like lighting people up in high school the same way you've done on TV?
Yes. And without any of the like wisdom that comes with adulthood or any, you know what I mean? Like whenever you grow up and mature and you kind of understand more about like what's okay and what's not okay, none of that. None of that existed in my teenage body. I was just a full monster 100% of the time, all the time.
Th-
I had no redeeming qualities as a person. I don't hold it against anyone who hated me in high school.
Have you ever been back to the small town you're from?
Not really. No. Mm-mm. My parents still live there, but they live really outside because they live in the middle of nowhere. They live on like a bunch of acres in the middle of nowhere. So I don't really have any interactions with or like go in and see the townies.
When did you like stop being mean?
Well, that depends. Do you think I was mean on season 12?
No, I think you're entertaining.
Um, I don't know. Yeah, there's sorry, my dog is now in here jumping around. There's something to be said for yes, like you grow up and you kind of understand. I think what it is too is understanding experiences that other people have had or what makes them who they are. And like understanding that and gaining that wisdom that comes with age changes you. And it definitely did for me. Like I just feel like whenever I was younger, I would never take into account or consider if someone was bothering me in some way or if I didn't like something, I would never consider why it bothered me or what it was that they were expressing or what their story was, what was the backstory behind why they were the way that they were and why that was triggering me or bothering me or whatever. That is something that I think you just only accomplish through like maturity. Is my take on it because that's how it was for me. It wasn't like one day I subscribed to a course about not being mean and it changed my life. It was really just like as I got older, I kind of realized where my like blind spots were and what I wasn't understanding about the human experience in general and what I wasn't seeing in other people that led them to whatever choices or behaviors that they were doing. And that was just something that came to me over time, I would say.
When you say blind spots, what do you feel that you were deficient in that you like became aware of?
Everything. I mean, like I said, I grew up in everything. I grew up in a really, really tiny town in Arkansas. Like, it's a very sheltered existence where, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have like a lot of I had no perspectives on the way that anyone else's life went really. Like I just assumed that everyone grew up the same way that I did in the same circumstances that I did because it was all that I saw. It was all that I knew and I didn't have anyone kind of trying to educate me or make me aware. I feel like it was a very limited scope of what we're taught in school and what we really are exposed to. I was exposed to so little in this small town. And so it just really wasn't a culture of curiosity about how the experience is for anybody else in the world, but also it wasn't a culture of like seeking that education either. It was very much just like, oh, well, this is how it is for me, so this is how it is for everybody. And I think that I felt that way all the way into college, really.
And then when did it hit you like, hey, like there's more to the world except for the small town in Arkansas? Like, is there a moment where
That
you're
had
like, I'm completely like a fish out of water? Was there a moment that you realized that?
I think I felt that way in college because it was like a completely new set of people, a different school, obviously a different school, way more diversity, way more just like, and when I say way more, some at all,
Yeah.
just more different types of people, different cultures and things. And that was like I think the first time that I really had any exposure and was able to start to think like, oh, this is really interesting. Not everybody has the same experience, you know. But definitely something that has just continued throughout my life. And I think I still learn all the time. I'm still learning all the time about different experiences, different things that I've never even thought about. Things that I've literally never even really taken like a hard consideration to. And that still happens to me today. And I'm however old I am. I think I'm 36.
Based on how you're brought up, has that impacted how has that impacted how you're raising your 3 girls? Like, are you very aware, like, "Hey, we're doing the opposite of rural Arkansas," or, like, how has that impacted what you're doing now?
Yes, I think I'm hyper aware of it and maybe a little bit over the top. I'm definitely fully like, yeah, I drive my mom crazy in particular because I try not that I raise them with no rules, but I definitely want them to be like in charge of all of their decisions. I want them to feel like everything is within reason. Like obviously there's safety to consider and things like that. But I want them to be in charge of their choices when it comes to their activities, when it comes to what they wear, when it comes to what they enjoy doing. I want them to be very much in charge of all that. I try not to set any standards or expectations on them. Like I want them to pursue whatever they're authentically passionate about. And I try as hard as I can not to influence anything they do. And sometimes it's very hard. But I try really, really hard to just be like, okay. And I want them to know everything and all sides. I try to make sure that they really have good exposure to things. And yeah, I would say I'm definitely trying to do like the opposite thing.
So when you say, like, you don't try to influence them, like, and you have to bite your tongue, like, what's an example of that? And you just let them, like,
Um,
fly.
when they wear horrible outfits and when they won't brush their hair and when they, I mean, and it's hard. It's hard for me not to be like, no, like no, we are not doing this. And like, but I want them. Here's the thing: it's not so much that I care about what they wear or don't wear. I mean, I do care, but I don't want them to ever feel like self conscious about it because I feel like that's what I would feel as like a kid would be like if somebody said something negative. Well, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh. Do I look terrible? Like, is this awful? Is this a bad choice? And I don't want them to question their choices that way. So I try very much to just not say anything more, not even so much because the outfit is terrible, but because I don't want them to feel self conscious about it, if that makes sense. Like, I try to go overboard to just be like, everything you do is great. I love that. What an original idea. Like, this is wonderful. Because I don't want to like instill in them any idea that they should ever feel like embarrassed or self-conscious about something.
That's really interesting to hear from you because, we've spent a lot of time together and, we keep in touch, but I always look at you as like someone who's very confident in who you are, how you act, the decisions you make. So like to hear that coming from you is surprising that that's not always been that way for you.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Like I think that I mean, definitely, like, I feel like this conversation is very, like, deep therapy, but I would feel a lot of that, like, as a kid, like, am I doing this right? Does this look okay? A lot of, like, those shame and embarrassment feelings. And so I try to, like, shield my kids from that as a parent for sure. I think that I'm doing parenting to the extreme in a way that's, like, letting them choose and make their own decisions about everything.
Is there something like for you when you were growing up that's like, man, this really like impacted me? Someone said something because I just like it's hard for me to visualize you in a world where you're not just kind of like being Britney.
No, I mean, I think that like as we touched on before, how I like kind of wasn't the cool kid, probably had a lot to do with that because I was always sort of like, I wanted to be a cool kid. I wanted to be super popular. I wanted to be super well liked, and I felt like I had like all these things that I couldn't control against me, and it made me maybe a little bit self conscious about the moves that I make and made me defensive too. Like I think part of me saying that I'm mean, a part of me was also just like on defense all the time because I wasn't inherently cool. I wasn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't inherently accepted because of who my family was or whatever, which is kind of how these small towns operate. And so I think that the defense mechanism was also really strong.
So so when you talk about like the defense mechanism and things like that, it had to be, and I'm not an emotional guy, but
Yeah.
um
You aren't? That's so weird.
I'm not an emotional
I'm
guy, but for your daughters to be of age now, and like I get it, like how old is your oldest?
10.
10, and then what's the middle and the youngest?
10, 8, 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it, like, when you're on TV or whatever, like, your kids really don't care. Like, they're just focused
Yeah.
on their life. "Hey,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Are we having pizza tonight for dinner?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But even with that, on your last venture on the reality TV, like, there's this kind of touching moment where, like, here's adversity, here's Brittany, here's the odds stacked against her. Hey, you're kind of an outcast. Everyone's kinda saying, like, "Hey, you're kind of fending for yourself."
Yes.
And lo and behold, like you dig yourself out of there. And it's a very touching moment for you. Like, did you, when you were going through that, what were you thinking about?
Um, First of all, I felt like I was such an outsider, like going in, because I just didn't have the pre-formed
Yeah.
relationships. I didn't walk in with all these
Yeah.
relationships. In fact, the one relationship that I walked in with was a girl that I was pretty sure still hated me. So it was like the opposite of a pre-arranged alliance. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And the people that I knew loosely were Frankie and Danielle, but I had met them a couple months before, and I knew that they were good with
Yeah.
everyone,
You're
right?
by
Like
yourself. There's no like,
I'm by
yeah.
myself. Like they have everyone in here. I have no one in here. And so, every single night when we would go back and I would like lay down, I would be so grateful that I had even made it that day because it felt like such an impossible mountain. And that when I would get up in the morning and start to get ready, I would be like, if I can just make it through the day. Like every day was just get through today, get through today, get through today. And so I think that in that moment, I had really kind of resigned myself to, well, this is it. I made it 3 days. 3 days is good. It's not terrible. It could be worse. It's the whole first week after all. This is fine. I had like resigned myself to like, well, this is it. Like, I literally was in my mind just like, could my husband fly out? Yeah, how many days is that before we have to be there? Okay, 2 days. Okay, we could do. Like, I completely thought that it was done. Completely thought that it was done, and I was basing that information not on the fact that I have no confidence in myself, because I think a lot of people took it that way, but because of the times that Frankie and Xavier had posted doing the same challenge. And so Frankie had come in and it didn't show it on the show, but I was going to volunteer to go in second. We had like this plan where I was going to go second if it was like doable. And so I looked at Frankie and was like, "Is it doable?" And he was like, "No, it's really hard." And I was like, "It is?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's really hard. I think if I put Xavier in, like he really won't make it. Like it's hard." So that scared me to death. Like when he said that to me, like, "Oh, it's really hard." That was the moment that I was like, "Okay, never mind. I'm not doing it." Up until that point, I was like, if he comes back and it's like, "Oh, it's a breeze," I would have gone second. But I was like, not going to go second whenever he just told me that it was like very, very difficult.
So,
So
so for context, you're in this situation where if you don't compete well in this challenge, it's over. You're going home.
correct.
Okay.
And I have no confidence because of the two people who have gone before me, both like Xavier, for example, did it in 4 minutes and 20 seconds, and I only had 3.5 minutes to do it.
So both were
So
super
it's
athletic, had more time than
yeah,
you, and then it's like,
yeah.
here you go.
And they both were unable to do it in the time frame that I had, or right about.
So why weren't you just like, forget it, like whatever, like I'll take my L? How come you didn't? How come that wasn't your decision?
I wanted to I wanted to gamble on I won't have to do it at all. If
Okay.
I keep putting it off, somebody will lose and I won't have to do it at all. I won't even have to mess with it. That was sort of my mentality. And so when I got thrown in and there was only 3.5 minutes to complete it, I just was like, well, 3.5 minutes, I'll be chilling. I'll be chilling, stress free, relaxing until the finale, like whatever. I had just like resigned myself. And so to actually go in and do it, no one was more shocked than I was. Like, I was shocked. And it was super emotional, like, which I'm emotional anyway, but I do pride myself that I did not crack until that day. Like, the first 2 days, I really was doing pretty good. I was like, I'm managing this. I have taken my anxieties down. Like, I'm a new person. Look at me go. I am so good at this now. Look at how I'm able to compartmentalize. And then on day three, I cried every day after that. Like, day three cracked me for good. But I just felt super emotional because, yes, I really, really thought that that was going to be like end me. And not only did it not end me, I actually did super well. It actually wasn't that hard, Frankie.
So you went from like this moment of, okay, hey, like I'm just going to take my loss. And then how does it go from, hey, I'm taking a loss to I can actually do this to I did this?
I was in the wheel and I was just working. I was not looking at the clock at all, but it's transparent, obviously. So I'm just working, I'm just working. It wasn't until I was almost done, like I was coming through the last couple of turns, that I finally looked at the clock and I still had like 2 minutes left. And I was like, oh my God, what? Like, I still have that much time left. Like, what? I was shocked. And so then I was like, oh my God, I can finish this. And so I like quickly made the last couple of turns and I still had like a minute and a half. And I was like, oh, what? Like, I could not believe it. I really couldn't believe it. I was just like, what is happening right now? Everyone said this was so hard. Xavier wasn't able to he barely made it through 4.5 minutes. Like, how is this even possible? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And so it felt like I had cheated death. It felt like, I mean, I was just in a state of shock. And then I started crying because number one, I couldn't believe it. I was really proud of myself and really happy. And number two, I was just like, all of those people in there were complicit in my death. And they were all fine with me dying. And like, I'm so mad at the same time. It was like all the emotions. And like, you're not really mad because you're on a TV show called The Reindeer Games and no one is dying. And it's about a Santa and saving Christmas. So like, you're not really mad, but you are kind of mad because it's like I thought you were my friend. Like, here I thought we were. So it was like all the emotions at one time, all at the same time. And I was constantly thinking about my kids watching it, how they're going to feel, how they're going to take it. And in that moment, I was thinking about like how fun this would be to watch with them. Like this moment where it looked like I was going out. It looked like this was going to be it for me. And then it's not. Like how great that was going to be to see with them.
I just felt like it was very interesting because you have this, let's just call it is what it is. And I think we're both self aware. This like reality show that's very campy slash cheesy, like this
Yeah, yeah.
holiday version. And yet there's this moment of like, okay, I'm watching someone I met on this cheesy reality show and I'm like crying. I'm like, what? Like, but there are moments of this. But for you, I've always felt like, for you, like, people always underestimate you. Like, when we had a chance to get to know each other and play together, I'm like, she's dangerous. She's smart. Contrary to what you think, I think you're very athletic. And just to see that happen, and I'm like, man, like it was very touching, even in this environment of like a lot of Christmas like cheese.
A
But
lot of Christmas
there's
elf.
there's this human moment, and it's like, what an amazing thing for you. Because I say this tongue in cheek. I don't know how you feel about reality TV, but it's like, yeah, you had fun moments, but like you not like it's not like on your mantle, right? Like in your
Right.
house. There's just not
Yeah.
like that. But like here's this moment where you got to share with everyone, showing like the resiliency that you had. And I can probably say verbatim what your kids said when you showed it to them. But even so, like that has to feel good for you at some point in their lives when they can process it, that there's this moment of their mom like really overcoming a ton of odds. Like How do you
It
feel about
did.
that, even within the context?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I feel like I don't want to just talk about my kids literally 24/7 because that is what I do. I talk about my kids nonstop and all the time. And
Well,
I know that that does
because you're a great mom.
it doesn't translate really well for people who like don't have kids and are like, okay, we gotta like you love your kids. But you know, some of my parenting has been more difficult. I've been through really hard moments as a parent. I've been through really hard times as a parent. And raising one of my kids in particular who faces a lot of challenges and who faces a lot of adversity, we have a really open dialogue about it. We have a really open dialogue about her experiences, her life experiences, things that she's already been through, things that she continues to go through. And really in that moment, that's a lot of what was driving the emotion for me was I preached to her all the time. You can do anything. You can do this. You can do this. You can do anything. Like don't be down on yourself. I know that you might feel inadequate, but don't feel down on yourself because you're capable. This is what I pour into her all the time. And I'm sure that's easy to say coming from me who is completely physically capable, hasn't been through the same struggles personally that she has. So I think that in that moment, I was kind of not equating our experiences at all, but this was a way for me to say, look, I felt like I couldn't do this. I really felt like I was incapable of doing this, and I didn't feel like I could. And to actually have a tangible example of, even though it felt like a waste of my time, even though it felt like I couldn't do it, I still tried. I still tried. I tried my hardest. I did it anyways. It happened to work out. And I think that that was driving a lot of the emotion for me as well.
You talk about a lot of adversity in parenting, and you've been through a lot of adversity. And if when you talk about with your first child,
Hmm.
you went through a pretty serious thing. As a parent, I can't even imagine what that's like now that you're, I mean, not far from it, but remove from your
Yeah.
firstborn having cancer. Like, what have you taken from that? Because I can't even imagine what that was like to wake up and know, hey, this is
Um,
catastrophic.
I mean, it definitely changes every single part of you. It changes who you thought you were going to be as a parent versus who you are, what you think you're going to go through, what you think that experience is going to be, and then it's very, very different. Um, it definitely changed me forever. It changed me and my life forever. But I never want, I would never try to say, to try to put it on her and that that's a negative thing, if that makes sense. I would never want her to hear me say that and feel like she bears any responsibility for whatever I felt at the time or however, whatever experience that I may have had. I try to really keep in mind how it would feel for her to hear me talk about it, if that makes sense. And I would never want her to think that she impacted me negatively or that you know what I mean? Within reason, like obviously someday when she's an adult, I feel like she'll understand my perspective on it. But right now she's still 10 and I would never want to impose any feelings on her of responsibility or anything like that. So I'm pretty careful when it comes to saying anything about it, other than just, yes, I've been through a really difficult situation as a parent. She endures really difficult situations every day of her life and has been through really difficult things in her life that most people will never have to experience. And we're all profoundly different people. However, she's like my greatest source of inspiration. I think that she's amazing. I think that she's like the most amazing, incredible kid on earth. She's a million times better than me as a person, as a heart, like as a human. And I'm so proud of her and everything that she is and everything that she will become. I'm so proud of her that, not to say I wouldn't change it. Would I change it? Yeah, I would change it. Of course, if I could erase that experience for all of us, would I? Yes. But at the same time, is there a little bit of gratitude in how we moved forward as a family and the strength that I've seen it build in her, yes, absolutely.
How did you move forward? Like when you look back at that whole thing and you're like, how did I get through this? How did you get through it?
I mean, not well. There's not a good way. I don't think. I mean, everyone's different, not well. When I look back at that period in my life, I see a very sad person. I was for many years really uh difficult. Everything was difficult and every day was difficult. I'll just be honest. It was really hard. Um but I started going to therapy and I started trying to heal myself, and I've done a lot of work around it, and I've done a lot, and I think, obviously it's helpful as she's gotten older that she gets to be involved in the conversations, and we have really, really great, really deep, meaningful conversations. And that was freeing for me too, because for so long I was the keeper and the protector of her story and keeping it and protecting it all by myself. And so when she kind of got to an age where I could open up really to her and to let her in on what was going on, why do we do these things that we do? Why do we go to these appointments? Why do we do these things? At a point where I could have honest conversations with her and let her take some of that herself, was a time when things started to improve as well, because it's easier for her to kind of be my partner than it is for me to hold and protect everything, if that makes sense, alone. Um, so I didn't do it well. I'm no textbook example of like how someone should handle a similar situation. I was literally just getting by. I was like bald and a shell of a human for a very long time. And it's been 10 years. And, I listen, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still a human figuring it out a lot of the time. But I think that it has gotten better over the years. Just you can credit therapy or the dialogue with her, and seeing her really rise to the occasion and be such an awesome person is really helpful too. But I certainly would never want anyone to look at me as any sort of like a roadmap of how to navigate, because you don't, it's not a situation you want to be in. It's not a situation that you ask or grant permission to be in. You just are thrust into it and you got to do the best you can. And the best you can is different for everybody. And that's all I did. And I by no means am like a beacon of, here, take my roadmap to tragedy and navigate this in this great way. It was literally just figuring it out one day at a time.
Well, I mean, from someone on the outside, like I know you, I don't know exactly, and not a lot of people know exactly what you went through, but for you to like be as functional as you are to like kind of get through it. I mean, I wouldn't. You are a beacon, though. You know what I mean? Like people will look to you and be like, okay, like Brittany went through it, so like I can definitely go through it. Is there anything you're like, hey, this like someone's listening right now and maybe they're going through a similar situation? Is there something you're like, okay, this is one thing I did that this was, I'm glad I did it.
I definitely am glad that I got into therapy and started like really giving myself the time, because for so long for years, I'm talking, I was so focused on just on her entirely and what can I do, everything that I can do for her. And it took me many years before I was like, okay, maybe I can work on myself a little bit here too. I wish that I had done that even sooner, because I do think that that's been just really tremendously helpful for me. I always have really good takeaways of just like, oh my gosh, yes, like that's a really good way to think about that I would not have come to myself. And I think that it's just time. Some of it's just time, one thing that like was really weird for me was after going through something so serious and so hard, my whole thing is being funny. And there were periods of time where I wondered, like, will I ever get that back? Like, how can I ever be funny again? because of the gravity of this, has pulled me down. And not just me as a person down, but what people know about me now. You know what I mean? Like, when you've been through something like what I've been through, can I still complain about the person writing a check in front of me at the grocery store? Like, are you allowed to still make jokes? Like, this was like a real dilemma in my life of like, am I ever even if I feel like being funny again, am I ever really going to be able to be? Because isn't that kind of weird? And it took me a really long time to figure out, like, yeah, while I am a profoundly different person, I'm also still the same Chief Karen complainer, like, girl that I always was. Like, yes, I absolutely am. Yes, I'm absolutely still going to complain about that. I'm still going to gripe about this. I'm still going to make a joke about this. Humor through everything is, my life. And so, but it took me a long time to rectify those two things. I think it was a lot of reflection for me to try to rectify. I can have had this experience, but then also still be a little bit of my old self shining through too, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and that's interesting to hear because I think of you as like one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And there's people who like turn it on and it's like, okay, it's their
Yeah.
time to be funny. Like my time spent around you, even when we're texting or whatever, you're just a genuinely funny person. So to see like, I would thought from the outside that you got through that by making like light of everything and making fun of everything. But to hear that it wasn't like that, that like for like a brief moment in time, not that you turned it off, but you were just a different person. It's like
Yeah.
it's really, like on this side, like heartbreaking here because like I can't imagine Britney not being Britney because it's not you like the TV character. Like that's just kind of who you are. You know,
Yeah. And
and you're so
all the things that on TV make for great TV, like massive anxiety and like all these things, those are the things that like don't do great in the real world and like actually make, you know what I mean? Like those are the things that actually make it harder to like go through life as well. And so yeah, all of the above. And it definitely did take me a while to really like find my footing again. And I'll see that happen. Sometimes I've seen that happen, situations happen like that to someone else similarly, and I'll be like, oh, I kind of have this like weird understanding of that. Like, how do I go through something that's horrible? That's horrible. It's like the worst thing that I can imagine. And then, but like, hey guys, don't worry. Like, I'm still really funny. Like, it's a weird thing to rectify.
So when you talk about being funny, because literally, I'm not just gassing you up. I literally find you to be one of the funniest people that I've ever met, and I think a lot of people do that have either interacted with you in real life or seen you on television. So to pivot a little bit for you, where does that come from? Like, I feel like the hardest thing to do in life is to be funny because I think you have to be very intelligent, which you clearly are. But where does that come from for you?
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know.
Like,
This is just my personality.
but like when you're growing up, would you just like start ripping jokes and everyone starts like bust, like you know what I mean? Like you're just naturally funny.
Yeah, and I think a little bit too was that first of all, I always like really enjoyed being the center of like a good laugh. Like I wanted to make the good joke. So I have been kind of like honing that my whole life. And then also like my mom in particular, the like worse and more cutting the joke was, the better she thought it was. And so it was just like sort of ingrained in me to like go to this style, I guess, which later, I feel like it was later in my life that I really kind of like rotated into the self-deprecation because the self-awareness like kicked in, which
Hmm.
is good. That's a healthy thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just probably just a product of a really weird environment. Like a really weird, creepy, strange, one time only environment. I don't know.
Yeah, because you're from this rural town, very small. Which side note, how come you don't have an accent?
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Um, I don't know. My husband and I talk about this all the time. When we go home for family functions, I hope none of them are watching this. We leave and we're like, why don't we talk like that? Like, is Tulsa really that much? Like, who? Like we wonder ourselves why we don't really have an accent. I don't know. We just we pulled ourselves out of it. We were like, no, we're not doing that.
All right. So as things like kind of wrap up here, so you've been on 4 reality shows, been through all different kinds of adversity. Now, like you pivoted. Now you're like mom. Now you're doing like real estate stuff. What do you outside of being a phenomenal mom and wife? Like, what are you focusing on from here on out? That like
I don't know. That's a good question. I definitely have really enjoyed being back in the workspace. I stayed home for so long. I've only been working for the last 2 to 3 years.
Mhm.
And I've really, really enjoyed that. And so I'm really kind of establishing myself a little bit more, getting a clearer sense of what I want to do and where I want to take things career wise. But it's very enjoyable. Staying home was great. I loved it. I'll never regret the time that I spent home with my kids, but I'm also really enjoying being a working girl again.
And right now, so for someone that happens to be listening in the area you service, so you do real estate in what area? If you want to put it out there for someone's like,
Tulsa, great area.
are you comfortable with someone reaching out to you and be like, hey, I liked you on Amazing Race or Big Brother or whatever. Can
Yeah,
you represent me?
absolutely. Absolutely. And what's really funny about you saying that is that at the beginning, whenever I first started, I was really hesitant. I was really hesitant to like use my maiden name, which is what I go by on everything, on all the TV shows. Hesitant to use my maiden name, hesitant to get my contact information too much out there because of the tidal wave that I was going to experience of just like massive amounts of attention. I needed a way to gatekeep it. So I tried to be a little bit more low key. Guess what? Crickets. No one showed up. I'm ready for the tidal wave. Now I'm like, hey, I was on Big Brother. Does anybody here care? No? Okay. Like, I literally, Dan was like, I'm not ready to have so much at one time. Like, I better filter this through. And I am here to take the filter off. We are ready. We are open for business. Give me a call. Let's do it. Turns out I didn't need the filter.
So greater Oklahoma area. You need
Greater
real
Tulsa
estate.
area.
Greater Tulsa area.
For any of your real estate needs, I do also do work for the Oklahoma Proton Center, which is a proton radiation facility based out of Oklahoma City. And I do business development for them. So
What
should you
does
have
that
any
mean?
questions, I liaise with referring physicians here in Tulsa, try to generate referrals and things like that, work on their marketing team. And
Oh.
that meets a lot of values for me. It's a cancer treatment facility. So if anyone's ever curious about proton radiation or the pros and cons, they can hit me up for that as well. Or if you're a doctor's office
A
who
little
wants a
throwback
free
to
little throwback to the
little
fun
throwback to
days.
your times in New York City. Yeah.
Yep,
Oh,
totally.
that's awesome,
Totally.
Brittany. Thank you so much for coming on. This has like been such a pleasure to like sit down and talk with you because we haven't like I mean we'll talk and when we talk we make fun of people on reality TV, but just to sit down
Yeah.
and catch up with you was really a pleasure for
I'm a
me.
little
And
bit
thank you
annoyed
for being
because
so open.
I fully expected to flip the conversation back to you 90% of the time. And here we sit at the end and I have not asked you one question. Like you're the one on TV starting next week. And we didn't even, not even one question. This is how you're so good at the social game, Dan. And this is what I tell literally everyone. Dan gets you to talk about yourself. And people love people who want to know about them. And this, I'm putting it out there. This is why you are so good and so dangerous. Look what you did.
But the difference is this is like real. Like I'm genuinely like I really like you. I think you bring so
And
much
that's what
joy
you
to a
told City in season 14. And that's exactly how you got her to use the veto. Same message.
But this is real. This is not for we're playing a cheesy
I was
reality
making
TV.
I was making my 14th cup of coffee, having never spoken to Gin City, and you had her in the backyard. What was your first guitar? What kind of guitar was that? Where'd you get the strings? What'd you get
That's
for
work.
Christmas?
This is real. Like this is well, I appreciate it, but I think a lot like I brought you on because I think you're one of my favorite people I've met in this crazy world. I think you're really dynamic, and I think you've gone through a lot of adversity and proven a lot of people. Like I always think that you are one of the most underrated people from so many different standpoints, from competitive but also
Thank you.
entertaining. And if you remember, like one thing I bug you probably I used to be annually, but before we had kids is like is you the thing I say about you, I feel like you're depriving the world of your humor and wit, um, because
Yes,
because
you do say
yeah,
that
because
a
you
lot.
have so many different takes and opinions, and you're so funny, and they're relegated to my phone. Like you don't share them. Like like hop on Instagram live, be like, hey, we're talking about this today. But I just think so highly of you, and I know a lot of people do. But
Thank you so
thank
much.
you for being so open, and it was really nice to catch up with you.
Thank you. I'm super pumped to watch you on TV too. I'm going to be watching every second.
Well, I just want you to know I haven't watched Big Brother in 100 years, and you brought me back because I wanted to watch you. I wanted to watch you compete, and it was so much fun.
It was 2 week commitment, very low commitment rate.
If it was, I would watch you on a real season, Brittany, because not on a full season, because you just bring so much to the show. And I feel like even though you said you were guarded or you're aware of what you're doing, you're still like you jump off on the TV because you're real, you're entertaining, and you're funny, and you know that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brittany, thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya.